I was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he brought this video to my attention.
And we have a culture where the difference is guns can be used for hunting or for sport shooting in Canada, and there's lots of gun owners, and they're mostly law-respecting and law-abiding. But you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That's not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. If you try and buy a gun and say it's for self-protection, no, you don't get that. You get it for hunting. You can get it for sport shooting. You take it to the range, no problem, as long as you go through our rigorous background checks. But there's a difference around the culture. And one of the things that we're seeing with the debate in the States is you get more and more of the American style, right to carry, self-defense arguments filtering up through the usual more right-wing communications channel.
When Joe Rogan pointed it out, he was shocked that Trudeau could actually say that because, according to him, it's not true. Well, not according to Joe, but according to people who were responding to it, that it wasn't true. But when I actually looked at the language of the law, he actually is technically kind of correct. In Canada, for the purposes of owning certain firearms, you don't have a right to use them for self-defense. You have a right to self-defense, but you don't have a right to use a firearm or those particular firearms for self-defense. If you can't use the most effective means to protect yourself, do you really have self-defense? And that is the type of wordplay that a lot of these politicians like to use. They all do it. Joe Biden is notorious for saying, I support the Second Amendment, but the Constitution doesn't say that you have an unlimited right. All that nonsense. They all do it. They always start with, I support the Second Amendment, but. I support the Second Amendment, but. They're all feeding you word salad. And the reason why they do this is because we do have a Second Amendment. Our right to own firearms to protect ourselves in this country is codified in our Constitution. It doesn't give us the right. It protects the natural right. Self-defense is a natural right. However, saying you have a natural right, but not having the ability to execute that natural right doesn't mean anything. It's just words on paper or thoughts in our mind or ideals. If you can't execute them, then you have nothing. It's not about keeping us safe. It's about maintaining their control and power. That's it. We've already seen, and it's already been demonstrated, you cannot rely on police to protect you. Not because they're all evil, not because they don't want to. They can't. They don't have the means. They don't have the manpower. They can't get there in time to stop something once it happens. So we need to have what is most effective to stop it. But no, there's too many people in this country that are willing to just give up that right, thinking by some magical stroke of a pen, by banning certain firearms, that somehow criminals are no longer going to own those guns. That is dumb. Trudeau just said you don't have a right to use a firearm for self-defense, but Trudeau is surrounded by people with firearms to protect his life. Just think about that, and then think back to yourself and wonder, how much do these politicians really care about me? It's not about you, it's about control. That's why it's called gun control, not gun save lives or gun safety. Now they're calling it gun safety because we've been pointing out for decades how gun control is about control and not safety. So once again, they play with the words. They change it to, oh wait, we just want gun safety. What does that even mean? Gun safety to me means that you learn and get educated on how to handle a firearm safely. Gun safety to them is what guns can we restrict from the people in America. What does that have to do with gun safety? It has nothing to do with gun safety. Gun safety is the 4 rules of gun safety. We don't need organizations donating millions of dollars to different politicians to push gun control in order to have gun safety. But I want you to pay attention to how he talks to the people in Canada. He doesn't communicate. He doesn't speak to the people in Canada. He talks at them. And the reason why he does that is because Canada, they don't have a Second Amendment. Our politicians have to talk around the issue, have to come up with nice, soft words. They can't just do things unilaterally. That's why they're so frustrated, because we do have a constitution. And that's because the way our government was structured. I think people forget how this actual country was established. People forget we fought another country for being tyrannical. That country was literally trying to take guns away from us, and we said no and fought back and then established our own country after the fact. And because we used firearms, our own firearms, to fight that country to get our independence, we codified the ability of the people to maintain those arms in the event that the government we establish now happens to become tyrannical. We can fight that government off too, because the whole concept of this country was predicated on the idea of freedom. I'm sorry, I love my Canadian brothers, but they're still under the rule of the Queen. Who rules America? No one. We are a free country, and I'm tired of seeing people trying to throw that away for the sake of virtue signaling or for the sake of trying to feel safe instead of being safe. At any point, did anybody ever stop to think, you know what? Maybe if we had a society of people where those people grew up, learned how to use firearms responsibly and safely, maybe, just maybe, that country would be a force to be reckoned with. And guess who is a force to be reckoned with? We are. Say what you want. No country is perfect. Yes, we have violence in this country. Notice I didn't just say gun violence. I said violence, because violence is all the same. However you want to slice it, if it results in someone dying as a result of someone doing something to someone else unjustified, that is violence. This idea that we're going to specify gun violence and pull that out and somehow make things different is insane to me, especially when we understand how the numbers break down in the first place. Our violence isn't mass spread. That's the interesting thing about mass shootings. If you think about our violence, we don't have mass violence. Our violence comes from very particularized areas in this country that are all under the same type of condition. So, you need to ask yourself, what would actually change that? Ban the very thing that gives you the most power in this country to check your government? Our government has to tiptoe around us. Trudeau just gets up there and says, we're going to ban this gun, we're going to ban that gun, and guess what? You don't have a right to defend yourself with a gun. And then walks off like, yeah, I did it. But our politicians, the way our country is established, we were established to have checks on power because we understood that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we knew that because we were fighting back against a government to establish this country because they tried to rule absolutely. And we said no. Why would you want to throw that away? Why would you want to give that up? That makes no sense to me. But yet here we are in 2022, people screaming up and down, do something, do something. We're too eager to just do something, not realizing we are throwing away the baby with the bathwater. If our politicians who are screaming we need gun control and saying, oh, I believe and agree with the Second Amendment, they truly, honestly did, they would be condemning the things that Trudeau was doing. Trudeau is unilaterally making decisions that fly in the face of the very underrooted concepts of the Second Amendment. Yet you never hear them say anything negative about it. You never say, you know what? We have a Second Amendment in this country, and therefore we think what's going on in Canada is just not right. Oh, sure, we'll send soldiers and militaries and send people all across the globe to establish democracy. But for some reason, the neighbor to the north, who is completely undermining one of the most basic, fundamental, natural rights in the world, nothing, silence. And that's because our politicians who are talking about all this gun control stuff, they agree with him. They do not believe in the Second Amendment. To them, the Second Amendment is a thorn in their ass. They do not like it because you want to know what it does? It gives us the power. Stop being afraid of your own power. That's what the Second Amendment was about. It wasn't about overpowering the government. It's about having the ability to check the government. That's what the Second Amendment is about. But too many people are too scared to take that on. And I'm not saying we need to go in there and overthrow the government, but what I'm saying is protect your right to own firearms in this country, because that is the only thing you have that gives you the leverage necessary to keep our government in check. We have a judicial branch, we have a legislative branch, and we have an executive branch of our government. All three of those branches do not have unilateral power to do anything they want. They all check each other. And guess what? We have three branches of government according to what's written in our Constitution. But in reality, we have four: the legislative, the judicial, the executive, and the people. And the people don't mean shit if they don't have the effective means to check the government. And that effective means is firearms. It's that simple. Firearms. Stop thinking we're too progressive for firearms. Stop thinking we're too advanced for firearms. That's not how this works. At the end of the day, all across the world, people are still killing people. People are still dying. So there is no such thing as progressing past violence. That is a airy-fairy, nonsense, utopic mindset that is permeating very large aspects of this country, and it's destroying the country. Because in your attempts to create a utopia, you are stripping the people who need protection the most from being able to protect themselves. And that does not create a utopia. It creates a society of victims. And you know who preys on victims? Criminals. And you know whose guns are not going to get taken away with gun control? Criminals. So miss me with that utopia idea of, oh, no violence. No, there will always be violence because there will always be criminals. So empower the people who are not criminals to deal with those criminals when they arise. You know, we talk a lot about empowerment in this country, except for when it comes to the Second Amendment. However, I can't think of anything more empowering than having the most effective tool to protect you and your family. So help me spread this message by liking and sharing this video with everyone you know. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment, because the Second Amendment, when it said militia, it wasn't talking about the government. It was talking about you. Also, if you want to know where to find the I'm the Militia shirt and merchandise, click the I'm the Militia link in the description section of this video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And most importantly, make sure you hit that bell symbol.